this episode, we will learn how to create a harmonious, healthy, and happy relationship with the help of an author and distinguished trial attorney. He has been named a super lawyer in New York every year since 2007. The New York Law Journal named him to be the New York State Medical Malpractitioner Hall of Fame in 2014. Welcome to the show, Philip. How are you doing?
Very well, Toby. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate your presence here today, and I'm looking forward to the wonderful topic we're going to be discussing in this episode. It's all about love, it's all about relationship, and it's something that drives the world basically. So it's very, very essential to us. But before we dive down that part, I would just love to get to know you better, Philip. I would love to learn from your life and career journey, as studying law, becoming an attorney, becoming the super lawyer in New York every year since 2007, for example. So, would you like to share briefly your life story with us, your journey with us a little bit?
Sure. I have been a lawyer for over 40 years. I've been a trial lawyer, specializing in medical malpractice and personal injury. Um,
Mm.
I've had a very successful and rewarding career doing that. And what I have learned actually in the practice of law is, which was helpful in writing this book, is how to research medical issues. And that became very helpful in terms of researching the different areas that deal with relationship issues, namely psychiatry, psychology, biology, neurology, neurosciences, chemistry. So I was able to dig in, and I'll tell you how I got into this in a moment. But I was able to dig into this subject through the experience that I've had in my professional career, and they are that information is scattered throughout the book that I've written, that you're referring to, which is entitled "The Essential Rules of Love." Um, Now that book uh, deals with actually my third marriage. So if we're talking about relationships, I have a little insight into them, little experience. I was married three times. The first two marriages ended in divorce. I have three children from my first marriage, none from my second, but get along with both my ex-wives very well. Um, and It was my third relationship with my late wife, Susan, that formed the basis of this book that I wrote, and the insights that I learned uh, about love and relationships that I share in the book. And I hope will be helpful to your audience. It has been helpful to people that I know who've responded back to me and told me how it has been
Mm.
helpful to them. So um, that's really my life story in a nutshell.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that and giving us a quick summary of that. That's really lovely. Uh, you know, the purpose of this conversation is based on your book, basically. Like your book entitled "The Essential Rules of Love." Follows the death of your third wife, Susan. Like you said, she passed away in April 2017. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And you know, you wrote a lot of rules, basically, that you learned from that relationship or from the past relationships too, like some do's, some don'ts. But I would just love you to tell us a little bit about Susan and the inspiration behind this book.
Okay. Well, Susan was a wonderful woman. She was from the Midwest. She was brought up in St. Paul, Minnesota. She went to Syracuse University. She was an architect. She had been married once before and divorced and had two lovely children who I've come to be a father to, actually, to both of them, a boy and a girl, Lindsay and Danny. And we actually met. It's an interesting story. We met on Craigslist. I had
Oh.
This was before there were even dating sites. There was no Match, no
Yeah,
Bumble, none of that stuff. I had
yeah.
put an ad for uh, a share of a home in East Hampton for the summer,
Mm.
and I said, it's a two-bedroom home. You'd have your own bedroom, and it wasn't the personal ads, but it said real. It said home in the Hamptons, two-bedroom home. You have your own bedroom, your own bathroom. 2 months, July and August. Um, so you have your own privacy near the beach, whatnot. And by the way, I happen to be divorced, and I happen to like fine dining, and I happen to like dancing, and I happen to like museums. And if you rent this house, who knows what could happen? And
Yeah.
yeah, and she answered that ad. She had a number of other people, but she was the only person I contacted, and we hit it off right from the beginning. Um, and she was a wonderful lady. And as I say in the book, there are many things that she did to encourage our relationship and to foster it. In terms of, and it's very interesting because there's a lot of research and a lot written on this. I didn't know until I started writing the book. She was an excellent cook, really enjoyed it, and was very good at it. And she cooked for myself, of course, and for my boys and her family. And this was a vehicle to bring everyone together. And the research shows and proves what she did just by this act of cooking, which is showing and expressing her love, not just for her children, but for my children. And they came to appreciate that and they respected her for that and looked forward to that. And it was a real bonding experience that I lived through with her. And then in writing the book, when I started doing the research and reading about it, I found that there's a lot written about the benefits of cooking in relationships and how helpful it is to do that. Even just two people. One of the things we talk about, and I'll talk about the rules, the do's and don'ts. One of the things is to do activities together and participate in things together. And cooking is a great example of that. One person prepares the food, the other person cooks it. You have a couple of glasses of wine while you're doing this. It's a joint effort to accomplish something, spending time together and enjoying your company with the other person. It is a perfect example of one of the rules of love to do things together, activities together. Um, so that was Susan. The other thing she loved was gardening. She was a great gardener, and we bought a house together on the east end of Long Island, where we built our own garden. We really did it from scratch. Um, she was uh, the boss of the garden, and she really controlled it. But I contributed a lot of the hard work and labor, and it was another joint effort that we did. That when you go into something together and you start something together and you see it flourish, it is as if it was flourishing like our love was flourishing at the same time. Um, and it was another great activity that we participated in together that really helped bring us together and foster and bond our relationship. Um, so
Yeah.
that's really the story about Susan.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm sure you miss her every day. Maybe when you visit the garden, for example, or whenever you're doing some activities that you used to do together before in the past.
Yeah, she passed April 5th, 2017 from ovarian cancer. And
Mm,
there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of her still.
mm. Wow. Wow, that's a wonderful love story. That's a great love story. That, yeah, everyone out there, or some people, a lot of people, wish for, or are desiring to have also. Well, from your experience, having gone through 3 marriages, for example, and your experience so far, maybe with friends and life, basically, how would you, at this point in your life, define love?
Well, that's a great question. That's a fabulous question, Toby. That is the first chapter of my book, actually, because if you are going to be in a relationship and you want to foster a relationship, a good relationship, one of the first questions I asked when I started doing the research and writing for this book is, what is love? I mean, what is it really?
Mm,
And
mm,
it turns out that the most knowledgeable people, for instance, Eric Fromm, a very noted psychologist, said love is action. It is doing for other people, doing for uh, other people, love your family, doing for them, or in a relationship, your spouse or your partner is doing things for them. It's action. It's not passive. It is assertive. Um, Another very well-known famous psychiatrist, Harry Stack Sullivan, put it this way, and he said, "Love, you know, you're in love with somebody when you put their interests on the same footing as your own. When their interests
Mm,
are as important as yours, then you know you're in love with that person." I think that's a very telling description of what love is. Um, Thomas Lewis, a noted psychiatrist, one of the books that I've read, and I quote in my book, talks about meeting the other person's needs. You know when you're in
mm,
love, when you try and meet, and each of you meet each other's needs, whatever they may be. Um, so those are the three best examples of what I think of what love
mm.
is. And I think it's very
Yes.
helpful to people to have an understanding going into a relationship. I mean, if you're young and you're starting a relationship, this may be your first relationship, serious relationship. To know that, to have that kind of footing, that's really what you're shooting for, what your goal is in terms
Mm.
of a relationship.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, you are totally right. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. When you are going to a serious relationship, you should be able to put the need or the interest of the other person, equal to yours or maybe above yours if you are giving a sacrifice, and that person also is supposed to be willing to do the same thing for you too. Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you put a lot of research into your book. Finding out a lot of things, not just from you and Susan's experience also. So I would love to find out if like there's a science behind love, or if there's a science behind falling in love.
Yeah. So what happened is after she died, I was terribly distressed. And as one of the ways to deal with that grief, I started just writing stories about us, things that we did, places that we went, places that we traveled, and just to write about us. And in doing so,
Mm,
while I was doing that, I said, you know what? Let me start doing some reading and research about what it is that I'm writing about. What is this thing called love?
mm,
And what is it that makes a relationship? So I started reading about psychiatrists, psychologists. They were the first places I started. And then I got into neuroscience. And to answer your question that you just asked, yes, there is a science. Science studies what love is.
mm.
And, you may have heard the expression love at first sight.
Yeah.
There is that phenomenon. There is that phenomenon. Um, that's not what happened to Susan and I. We kind of grew into loving each other over a period of time. But what it turns out, what science, the neurosciences scientists realize, is that, and they've studied the brain, and they've studied it with functional MRIs, which is a technique where you look at the brain and you look at the blood flow in the brain and you see what areas of the brain lights up when, in these particular studies, they would show a picture of the loved one and they would see what's going on in your brain. Well, the areas of the brain that lit up, excuse me, were the same areas of the brain that deal with addiction, cigarette
Mm,
addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. It's the same
mm,
areas of the brain because when you see somebody, when you're with somebody in love, you get dopamine starts flowing and it makes you feel good.
mm.
And you want to
Yeah.
repeat that. So it
Mm.
feels good. The brain wants to repeat that. And you want to be with that person. You think about that person. You're obsessed with that person. Why? Because it's making your brain feel good. The dopamine is flowing through your brain. Um, so it's very fascinating that there actually is a physical manifestation in your brain of what happens when you're in love, and that's been
Yeah.
demonstrated by neuroscientists and researchers.
Yeah, I find it so funny that it's related to that part of our brain that also reacts when we are addicted to something. So that means love could be a drug also.
Oh, love! Isn't
Some
that a
kind of,
song? Love is a drug. I think that's a song.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yes, it is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's more real than you think. I mean, it's actually going on. It's actually going on, and
Mm,
then
mm,
that's when you get those. very intense feelings of attraction and desire, and you're obsessed with the person. You can't get them off your mind. I mean, that kind of happens, and then after time that wanes, but that still happens in your brain 5 years later, 10 years later, when you're with the person that you love. That same thing still happens.
Yes, that strong feeling. That's yeah, yes. Yeah, and in your book in chapter 2, I believe, where you talked about the benefits of love, you opened up with a quote from Nature Boy, which says that the greatest thing we will ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
It's
So,
I quote many songs, but I didn't know that Nature Boy had that line in it. It's the last
mm,
line. I didn't know that the song, it's been popularized by many people, but I didn't know that the song was about love. But you're absolutely
mm,
right. The last line in that song is that what he came to learn from Nature Boy was the best thing was to love and be loved in return. It is
yeah,
it what makes, and in the rest of that chapter, I talk about what other people talk about the benefits of love. It makes you whole. It makes the person whole. It
mm,
gives the person a reason for being, a reason for living, to love someone else, and to be loved in return. It was
mm,
quite a shocking thing for me to read that lyric in that song,
mm,
um,
yeah,
because it was totally unexpected that that came from that song. And the interesting thing
yeah,
about
yeah,
that is, after doing all this research and whatnot, if you look at literature and poetry and music, you will see, and I quote much of it in the book, that many authors, poets, and lyricists already know what love is about. And we really know it because it's expressed in
mm,
music and poetry and
mm,
literature, and it kind of gives you a sense of well-being, that this is not
mm,
something foreign, but it's something that everyone knows and everyone can attain, and
mm.
if you just find the right person and do the right thing.
That's true. Yes, yes, the right things. Because I was going to ask you, like, for example, there are a lot of people, or a lot of times we go through heartbreaks, for example, from maybe some relationships in the past, and we suffer. Love brings this kind of pain also when it's over, and then you are talking about benefits of love. How would you encourage someone that there are some benefits to love after his or her heart have been broken like a couple of times in the past?
Well, it happens. I mean, not every love affair ends wonderfully. Um,
Mm,
but the reason I wrote that chapter is, okay, so what's so good about love? Why pursue it?
mm.
Why
Yes.
pursue it? Because it is beneficial. It's beneficial to us as human beings individually. I
Mm,
mean, one, Eric Fromm writes, is very existential, um, that if you think about our existence in the world, in the universe, and where we are,
mm,
regardless of whether you believe in an afterlife, or believe in a God or not, or spiritual, if you're spiritual. I mean, if you think about our existence in the universe, it can be very depressing when you realize how insignificant we may be. And his view
yeah.
is love is the thing that gets you past that. It is love
Mm,
that gives you a purpose for life, to love someone else,
mm.
and to go back to the nature boy and be loved in return. It gives your life
Yes.
purpose. So it is a terrific thing, a terrific benefit, and
Mm.
I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, yes, yes, me too. It gives you life purpose, direction, and it just makes you fuller, basically. It gives you that feeling that yes, you are alive.
Right, right. You're
Yeah.
alive.
Well, Philip, I'd love to just learn from you, like, from your ages of experience and, yeah. And yeah, from things that you've also seen in life, basically experiences. Yeah. Is there like a process or is there like the right way to find true love or to find that right love for ourselves?
There's no
If there's
right
something
way.
like that.
There's no right way to find it. People fall in love many different ways. and in
Mhm.
many different manners. Um, what I focused on was this is not a dating book. This is not a book to tell you how to find somebody or what to do on a date.
Mhm.
You're past that already when you read this book. This book is what are the guideposts, the signposts to see if there's a problem in your relationship, to address it, and what are the things to do to maintain your relationship. Now, as I said, the
Mhm.
book is entitled The Essential Rules of Love. That's because I'm a
Mhm.
lawyer. My whole training was
Yeah.
the rules of civil procedure, the rules of evidence, the
Mhm.
rules of hearsay. So when I started doing the research, I just naturally compartmentalized the things that I was reading about into, I said, how can I organize this? How can I organize this so it's intelligible? And it just naturally fell into kind of rules. Um,
Mhm.
and I consolidated them into what I call 10 do's and don'ts. And these
Mhm.
are suggestions, things to look out for from your partner, things for you to do. And one of the one author um, talked about the most important thing about being in a relationship is being committed to that relationship. If there's anything that's the most important thing, if you want it to succeed, you're committed to the success of the relationship. And what these do's and don'ts do is give you guidelines to what to do, what not to do if you're committed to a relationship to keep that relationship healthy and happy and harmonious, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody's going to have problems, everybody's going to have disagreements. So how do you deal with it? Um,
Mhm.
and if you can do these things, um, they're not, well, they can be difficult, but they're not hard to understand. They don't take a lot of time. And if you can do them, I think it will foster good relationships. If you can't, you have to ask yourself two questions. One, am I with the wrong person? Maybe this is not the right
Mhm.
person if I can't do these
Mhm.
things. And I'm going to go over them now. You'll see they're relatively easy concepts. Uh,
Mhm.
or is there something about me, my psychology, that prevents me from doing these things? Maybe I need to see a therapist or a counselor to understand about myself, to see if there's something that is preventing me from doing these things or acting in this way. And it's that it's not the other person, but maybe it's me. So that's the two things that these do's and don'ts uh, are helpful for.
Hi, friend. Are you enjoying this episode? We would love to hear from you. Kindly send us a feedback. Are you following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, maybe on YouTube and other podcast platforms? Are you following us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook? We would love to connect with you on all platforms. Links and further details are available in the show notes of this episode. Thank you. Yeah, please, would you like to share these do's and don'ts with
Sure,
us? Like,
that's
what are the
no
essential
problem by
rules?
all
Yes,
means.
yes,
This is
yes.
what I've consolidated. I've condensed the book to. Well, the first is
Yeah.
the first is you're going to have disagreements. You're always going to have a disagreement in a relationship. But when you have a disagreement, don't number one, don't raise your voice.
Mm,
Raising your voice is not a helpful thing. Raising your voice only puts the other person on the defensive. Um,
mm,
I know people say, "Oh, we get into fights, when you like to yell and scream and whatnot." Well, maybe that's so, but for most people, it is not helpful to do that because the other person then turns off, stops listening to you, and now how am I going to defend myself if you're raising your voice to me?
mm,
Raising your voice. Some psychologists talk about raising your voice and yelling as an act of abuse. Nobody wants to be
mm,
abused. And being abused is not going to be helpful in terms of communication. The other thing in terms of communication and raising your voices If you want to have a discussion about some serious thing, don't do it when you're drinking. Drinking, it's great, have a few glasses of wine or whatnot, but it lowers your inhibitions and it makes you say things you may regret later on. If you're going to have a serious conversation about something, don't do it then. Say to each other, all right, we'll talk about this tomorrow. Now we'll just enjoy ourselves and put that aside because you wind up saying things that you regret. So that's don't number one. Um, don't number two. Don't call your partner a name unless it's a pet name uh,
Mm,
that you have for each other. Once you start calling somebody a name, psychologists call that bullying. Nobody likes to be bullied, and nobody is going to listen and engage in open conversation if they think they're being bullied. So it gets you nowhere by calling somebody saying you're stupid. Well, that's not going to endear me to open up to you and tell you what I really
mm,
feel and how to have an intelligent conversation. So that's number two. Number three, don't criticize, condemn, or complain about the other person in front of other people. And I know people have seen this. You're out, maybe a cocktail party or dinner, and you hear somebody criticizing their partners. Oh, you do this, you do that, and why don't you do this? And it's unsettling. It's unsettling to the people around, but it's also degrading to the person who's on the receiving end of it. And it doesn't engender open communication. Again, it encourages defensiveness and and vindictiveness. Because if you're going to criticize me, well, and then I'm going to criticize you. It does not lend itself to good open communication. Um, if you have a problem with the other person, save it for when you're alone and privately and you want to talk about it and seriously and intelligently, not in public. You don't want to embarrass your partner or your spouse. Um, And the other thing, the last don't is don't tell your partner what to do about things that deal with themselves unless they ask you. Many people are in their second relationships, or in my case, third relationship. Um, and some of these psychiatrists, by the way, Eric Fromm was married 3 times and he wrote the leading book. So sometimes it takes a little experience to get there, right?
mm,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but you don't want to tell the other partner what to do. Say, for instance, about their children. Tell them how to discipline their children, unless they ask you,
Mm,
or what to do with their money, or what not to do with their money. People don't like to be told what to do. Now, if you're looking for help and you're looking for assistance, that's great. If you're asked, go ahead. But starting to tell people what to do um, and bossing them around is not great for an open, mutually um, uh, communicating relationship. It doesn't work that way. So those are my four don'ts.
yeah, yes,
I don't know if you
yeah.
have any
I
questions about
mean,
any of those or any comments, but those are
y-
basically. And
yeah.
again, if you can't do those things, if you
Mhm,
if you find yourself continually to do that, you got to ask yourself why. Why am I engaging in this behavior if I want to be committed to this
mhm,
relationship? Because it's not helpful.
yes. Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It makes a lot of sense when you speak about it right now. But sometimes some people say, like when you talk about not don't tell someone what to do with their issue, like how to treat their children or how to maybe spend their money or whatever. And so people think, okay, I am doing this out of love. I see my partner doing things in the way they are not meant to do, in my own opinion. So out of love, I think I have to tell my partner what to do. What would you say in that case? Like, some people that they're not doing it out of, trying to, bully or try to, lead the partner, but basically are just trying to, show love and say, oh, I see you going into a pit. Let me rescue you and tell you what to do in order not to fall into that pit that you're about to fall into.
Well, if you're going to do it out of love, The only thing that you should be telling somebody out of love not to do or watch out for, if they're doing something that's harmful to themselves. If you see
Mm,
that they're doing something that's harmful to themselves and not healthy, taking drugs, um, drinking excessively, gambling excessively, things that are destructive to themselves, well, then, yes, that's out of love to say, um, you're spending our household money on card games, on internet card games, and it's affecting our relationship. Uh, this is
mm,
not this is not good for us. It's not good for you. It's not good for us. Yes, that's out of
mm,
love. But if the person is telling their child, you have to go upstairs and do your homework now, it is not out of love to say, oh, no, they don't have to do their homework. Let them watch TV. That's not out of
mm.
love. You're not accomplishing anything there. You're not. That's being a
True.
boss. That's trying to tell them how to raise
Mm,
their children. That it's their
mm,
child.
mm,
Let them raise their child unless they ask you. Um,
mm.
and so that's the way I would answer that question. Um, in
Yeah,
terms of doing something, trying to tell somebody something out of love.
yeah, yeah.
You're kidding
I know.
yourself if you're saying I'm
Mhm.
telling them out of love. If I'm telling them they could watch TV instead of do their homework, maybe I'm trying to ingratiate myself with their child, but it really isn't.
Mm,
It really isn't helpful to my relationship with my partner or my spouse.
mm. That's true. So as long as it is healthy, then you should allow them to do what they want to do with whatever they own or want to. Yeah.
Yeah, or if they're not harmful. I mean, maybe you have a difference of opinion about how doing something, but there's
Mm,
more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to do something. That's very
true.
different from somebody engaging in harmful behavior. Uh,
Mm, mm.
so that's the way I would answer
That's
that
true.
question.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're talking about, calling of names apart from pet names, that also very valid because I know sometimes we lose our temper and we just want to let go of that hunger and then it leads to calling other names that are not so, palatable or so good to hear. And I just want to know like how do you deal with such a situation in which maybe two partners are having a quarrel and they are not able to hold their temper, what do you advise them to do at that moment in order to de-escalate the situation and prevent them from calling themselves, bad names?
Well, if you sense that coming on, for instance, I use one example in my book. You're acting like a bitch. Well,
Mm,
acting like a bitch means you are a bitch. And that is a terrible thing. It has a terrible connotation. It's not
mm,
going to get you anywhere in advancing communication between the two of you. Um, and the thing to do to de-escalate it is to bite your tongue. You could stop yourself. You're not an involuntary robot. You have a thinking mind. You could stop yourself and say, "Okay, I'm going to walk out of the room. I'll be back when I calm down. Take a breather. Let's take 10 minutes." Because if you continue on that vein, nothing good is going to happen. You're much better off de escalating the situation, stopping the conflict, and then returning maybe even another day. Tomorrow, let's get together tomorrow at 9 o'clock after the kids are asleep and let's continue this conversation and talk. So that's what you have to do. And again, you got to make the. Are you going to be perfect? Maybe you won't be perfect, but make the effort. If you can stop yourself 2 out of 3 times, you're going a long way to relieving and not getting into that problem.
yeah. Oh, that means we have to always be intentional in that situation. Okay. In that situation, for example, just breathe in, breathe out, and analyze the situation. Am I going to explode? If I'm going to explode, let me just walk out of the room and, take a breather.
Yeah, take yourself out of that situation. Take
Yes,
yourself away
yes.
from
Oh,
the situation.
that's good. That's very good. Are there like some other tips you could share with us on how we could, create and maintain a long-lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationship?
Well, okay. Now we get into the do's, the positive things
Mm,
that you can do
mm,
in a relationship. Uh, the first thing is doing something for your partner without being asked. And this is what
mm,
Fromm meant by love is action. Um, doing even a little thing, bringing home flowers without being asked, saying, you know what, tonight we're going to go out to dinner. Um, you don't have to, you don't have to cook. Um, I'll take out the garbage today. You don't have to do that. I mean, I'm just talking about little. These are just little things, but you can do big things um, for the person. Bringing them home a gift, um, offering to drive the kids to school that day. Do
mm,
something without being asked, so that you're showing that you take the initiative. You're thinking about the other person, and I'm going to do something for you. It puts in that other person such a feeling of thoughtfulness and being thought of. It just opens up that person's heart. That's what it does. So that's number one. Number two, try and talk to each other at least once a day. I know this is difficult with children, but try and talk, have a serious conversation about what's going on that day, what's your plans for the day, what happened that day, how your day was, how it went. If you can't, Susan and I used to have an organizational meeting every morning before we left for work, over breakfast. Okay, what are you doing today? What am I doing today? What is it that I can do to help you? What can you do to help me? It's not long, 5 minutes while we're eating breakfast. All right, what's your day going to be like? What's my day going to be like? If you can't do that and you're out running around and people, got to take kids to school and make buses and whatnot. All right, at the end of the
mm,
day, after the kids go to sleep, how was your day? What problems did you have today? And this doesn't have to be long, 5 minutes just to show each other that you have an interest in the other person and the other person has an interest in you. Turn off the TV before you start watching Netflix, turn off the internet, turn off the phone. Not 5 minutes. Just show the person that you have an interest in them. You do
mm,
this every day, 5 days a week, 4 days a week. It goes a
mm,
long way to opening up communication. And if somebody has
mhm,
a problem, then you can say, I've got a problem with something that's going on here. You never
mm,
take out the garbage. It always falls to me to do it. It's very difficult for me. I'd like to talk to you about it because I don't feel good
mm,
about having to do this. I mean, unless you say you've decided, okay, this is your chore that you do, this is my chore that I do. But if somebody's always picking up after the other person, somebody's always going around cleaning up and tidying up, and you start to resent that, well, in this
mm,
5 minute talk during the day, you could say, you know what? I have a problem with something, and I'd like to set aside some time for us to talk about it because communication is the key to a good relationship. So that's a reason
mm.
to do this. Have a conversation at least once a day. Try to have it once a day.
Yeah.
Third, most importantly, always respect the other person. Love, if anything, is love is respect. Once you start disrespecting the other person, you're showing them that you do not care. You may be looking to harm them or hurt them in some way. And always treat the other person with respect. Um,
Mm.
and if you do that, that goes a long way to fostering, a close relationship and to keeping it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
how do you keep it? I mentioned this before at the beginning of our discussion. Do things together.
Yeah.
Do things. Now, you don't
Mm,
have to do
mm,
everything together. In a relationship, you don't give up your identity. You really shouldn't
mm,
give up your identity. That's not healthy. But find activities that you could do together. As I said, Susan and I gardened together. But I'll give you an example of something that we didn't do together, which was not healthy. I like to golf, and she golfed as a kid. So I thought this would be a good thing to start doing together, spending time together. I bought her a set of golf clubs. We went out on the golf course a number of times, and she had a problem following one of the fundamental rules of etiquette of golf. That is, you have to move along so you don't hold up the people behind you. Well, Susan would
mm.
hit a shot, and she thought she was going for a walk in the park, just ambling, walking around, walking around. I go, come on, you got to move, you got to move.
Yeah.
And she didn't like to play with other people. She was a little embarrassed. Golf is a very social game. You play with strangers. I've played with hundreds and hundreds of people I never met before. Never met somebody who plays golf who wasn't a nice, decent person, and you had a good time with, even though you never met them before. Well, Susan's very shy and didn't like that. She felt uncomfortable in that situation. So we soon realized golfing was not for us. Just didn't. So we didn't do it. I'd go golfing. She'd go do her pottery. Now, I didn't try and learn pottery because she did pottery. That was her thing. Golfing was my thing. So we kept our individual identities and our individual interests, but we also did things together. And it's the doing things together which is the act of helping to bond, helping to continue and grow that relationship. In that Craigslist ad I told you about, one of the things I said was I like fine dining and I like gardening.
Mhm.
And many years later, when we bought the house, when we were in the garden and we are doing it, I said to her, I bet you think that I just said that I like gardening as a come on. But you can see I really did like it. Really is something that we both, I didn't just say that for the sake of saying it. We really
Yeah.
both enjoyed it. And she
Mhm.
got a laugh out of that. So
Oh, that's good.
um, now, this thing, my next do may seem superficial to some people, but I don't think so. And that is take care in your appearance for the other person. I know some
Mhm.
people are slobs, okay. Well, if you're both slobs and you don't mind it, and that's the way you dress, okay, that's your thing. But most people aren't. And if your other half, um, and you're going out, it looks nice, you should look nice for them. They'll appreciate it. They will appreciate that you are doing this for them, that you look nice as a couple. So I think it's important. And this, I can't tell you any research. I can't cite any research that supports this. I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you. This is my own belief here. But showing the other
Mm.
person that you take care of you're interested in the way you dress, the way you look for them, tells them that you're concerned about them and you care about them.
Yeah. Of course, of
Right?
course. Yeah. You feel proud of them when they're beside you, for example, and you could always, yeah, just more attractive to them, or you're attracted to them basically because you feel like they took their time
Yeah.
to really dress the way they
Yeah,
dress.
you
Yeah.
took the
Yeah.
time to think about it, to think about me, and I'm proud to
Yes.
be with you because you look good. That goes both
Mm.
ways. So it seems like a little thing. Doesn't seem like, again, it's not written in the books, but I think it's something that people should think about in terms of a do. My last do
True.
is give the other person space. You can't
Mm.
control the other person. You can't be with them all the time. It's not healthy that you lose your own identity and you insist on doing everything together. The other person has to have their own interests, their own friends. Let the girls go out with the girls. You don't have to be there. Um, uh, she should not have to insist on coming to a Yankee game with you if you're going with your boyfriends. Um, so you have on the one hand you do things together. On the other hand, give the other person space to be themselves. That's how you want to be healthy. You want to be a healthy person to be in a relationship, healthy emotionally and mentally. I mean, in addition to physically, but mentally and physically. Um, and that's one of the ways to do it, to keep your own identity and to bond two individuals coming together and bonding in a relationship while still keeping their own identity. So those are my
Yeah.
10 do's and don'ts. And as I
Yeah.
say, um, if you can't do those things, you got to start asking yourselves, why can't we do this? What is it
Mm.
that's stopping us from doing this? Is it that I don't like to be with you when we're doing something together? And go out of your way to do something with the other person. Try it. I mean, another person may say, "Look, I love museums. All right, I hate museums." Well, okay, but let me see. I'll try. I'll go with you on this occasion. Let's see. You want to go to the Metropolitan? Let's go to the Metropolitan and see what it's all about. I'll do that with you.
Mhm.
Just to show that you're willing to participate with them and you care about what they think and what they feel. Um,
Mhm.
so that's really the nutshell of the or the takeaway from the dues, that you're doing things that shows and demonstrates to the other person that you're thinking about them, you're caring about them, and you're interested in them. That's
Mm.
what, as I
Yes,
say,
yes.
opens up the other person's heart.
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I have a question to respect. When you talked about love requires you to respect the other person, your partner. How can we truly respect our partner? Like, what does it mean to respect someone and that you're in love with?
Don't denigrate them. Don't
Mm,
if they're doing something or they're engaged in an activity, don't say anything that makes one think that you don't think that's important or you don't think
mm,
that's worthwhile. Um, don't call them names. Talk to
mm,
them in a way that shows that you're interested in what they're doing and that you are concerned about how they feel and what they're doing. That all goes into respect. Um, if you just go away off on your own and do something on your own, that's it's disrespectful.
mm,
So be concerned about the other person. Think about the other person. Um, Little things. You sit down at the table. You went to a restaurant. You sit down at the table. The waiter comes over, and you turn to your wife and say, "Okay, tell him what you'd like." You don't tell him what I want first. Tell him what you
mm.
like first. Tell him what you want. It's
Yeah,
a little thing, but it
mm,
shows respect.
mm. That's true. Wow. Little things that that shows that we love our partner and we respect them also. Yeah. Little but very,
Little
very
things mean a
important.
lot.
Yes, yes. I would just like to know, just as a means of reflection, like whenever you think about your relationship with Susan, because I know she is the inspiration behind this book, The Essential Rules of Love. Um, what stands out the most to you whenever you just remember, some moments that you shared together? What are like those moments that you reminisce on, like you remember and just smile or makes you laugh?
Hmm. Well, there's something. One of the psychiatrists talk about love and talks about resonance, where there's mutual resonance, where you feel what the other person's feeling. There's a lot of psychological experimentation and research on emotions and how you can
Mm,
sense and feel someone else's emotions, and someone else's emotions can influence you. If that other person is sad, you pick that up and you can become sad. Um, it's called resonance. That you can look into that other
mm,
person's eyes and you know what they feel, they know what you feel. Mutual resonance comes from Thomas Lewis's research. Um, one of the first years we were going out, I uh, took her New Year's Eve to the Rainbow Room. It's not anymore, doesn't around anymore. It was a fancy restaurant here in New York, and a photographer happened to come by and take a picture of us, and he happened to catch this. We just happened to be looking at each other's eyes, and we just happened to both be smiling at each other at the same time. And this guy
wow.
happened to catch that picture. And it was
Mm,
just such a positive, picture and demonstration. I mean, you could just tell looking at that picture that we were in love with each other. You could
mm.
just tell. Um, so that's something that
Mm.
sticks out in my mind.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to picture it in my head right now. I'm like, oh, that's so romantic.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it really was.
Yeah. Yeah. And in your book, you talked about, or you wrote up, so you write about the powerful bond of love that survives even death, basically. So, how and why does the strength of a powerful bond survive death?
Uh, why? Because love doesn't die when the person
Mm,
dies. When the body dies and passes on, uh, that feeling exists. It's a palpable feeling. Why? It's in your brain. It really is in your brain. I mean, the chemical reactions that caused love and caused the feelings of love and attraction um, are still in your brain. They don't die. Um, there's been much written about uh, love after death. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's famous poem, How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways. Well, everybody knows the beginning of that poem. But the last part of the poem, the last couple of lines, is that she will love thee more after death. And there's a debate among literature experts about whether she meant that she would see him when they both went on to the afterlife, and she would love him more then, or that she would just now, in the earthly sense, she would still love him and love him more now that he was not God. But it is a anybody who has experienced that, the death of a loved one, um, knows that it survives. Um, it
mm,
survives death. Um, there's a picture actually in the end of the book that we had taken when Susan got sick. We did a lot of traveling, and we had a picture taken, um, which was very kind of prophetic at the time. Black and white, kind of dramatic picture of a picture of me, of her actually looking at the camera, very beautiful. And they kind of caught me on the side, and I had my arm around her. And it was really, it kind of symbolized that I was protecting her from what she was going through with the cancer treatment and whatnot. And it is a picture of our relationship. Again, the picture survived, but the meaning of that picture and the protection of her and what went on with that and all of those memories all also survived her death. Um, it was a very compelling thing for me to realize how many authors have experienced and written about that phenomenon.
mm. Yeah, it's a bond that cannot be broken even after one person passes away to the other side. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, for someone out there who is searching for true love, what advice do you have for them? Who is like someone out there who is like, yes, Philip, I've heard your story and I feel so much in the need to fall in love, to find true love. How would you advise such a person?
Well, as I say, this is not a dating book. I really can't advise you on how to date.
Yeah, yeah.
The only advice I could give is be yourself. Be
Mm,
yourself. And don't try and change the other person. You start getting into a relationship, and this applies to people who are getting into relationships. And you see, well, I'm attracted to this person, I'm physically attracted to this person, but I can't stand that he does this. Can't stand that he does that. And I'm going to change him. I'm going to get involved in this relationship and I'm going to change him. Well, guess what? You're not going to do that. It's not going to happen.
mm,
So,
mm,
my advice is know yourself. You have to know yourself, understand who the other person is, and love that person for who they are. For who they are. And you're not going to find out for who they are till a little time. I mean, you fall in love with somebody, start going out with them. You're not going to find out for who they are and who they're really about 3 months, 6 months, a year.
mm.
Very often, you don't find out who somebody is until you start living with them and you see what they're really like. And
That's
excuse
true.
me, you don't want to be in a relationship and think that you're going to change the person. So those are my two pieces of advice. Be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. Don't be a phony about who you are. Because when you go back to being yourself, if the other person fell in love with the phony, then then the person's not there. Then you're not there. So
Yeah, that's true.
be yourself. Number one. Number
Mm,
two,
mm,
don't try and change the other person. Understand who the other person is, their good points, their bad points. If you can live with their bad points or the things that you're not so thrilled about, great. Don't go into a relationship thinking you're going to change them. you're going to get heartbreak that way.
True.
So those are my
Yes, that's
two
true.
pieces of advice in terms of how to find true love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's not a dating book, but I just wanted to, before you get into that stage of, maintaining and creating that love life, you have to at least find the true love first. And that's why I was asking that question. Thank you so much for
Right.
sharing
Right.
those
It's good.
2 points. Be
An
yourself.
excellent question.
Yes. So, the essential rules of love can be found on Amazon. I'm going to place the link to your website in the show note of this episode. So, I encourage everyone who is listening to get the book, read it. It's a must read for you if you want to, maintain or build up that love life that you have currently. So, Philip, and if there are people out there who still have some more questions to ask you, maybe they want to work closer with you, basically, what is the best way to connect and to work with you?
Well, it's on my website. I actually have a website, philrussotti.com, and my email is there. I'd be happy to speak to anybody. Thank you, Toby, for your remarks, your kind remarks about the book. I appreciate that. I think they are helpful. Um, it is not a book. I mean, many of these self help books by psychologists involve taking personality tests, involve all of these role playing back and forth. They're very detailed, very time consuming. I know people that have started them and then have been unable to finish them. I'm not saying they don't have their place. They certainly have their place. But my book is a little more condensed and I think an easy to read and easy to understand for the average person to see if your partner can't do these things, is this a red flag that there's maybe something wrong in our relationship that we should address? And are these the things that we can do to continue the relationship? So, anybody who has any questions or wants to communicate with me, Phil Russotti, RUSSOTTI.com. You'll see the email link there. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The link to your website will be in the show notes of this episode. Your email information is there. The link to your book is also there. And if they want to find out more about what you do, apart from writing, if they want to look into your law history and everything that you've accomplished,
I'm not here looking
they
for
can find
cases. I have enough cases. I'm not here looking for cases. I have enough
that.
cases.
I believe that, yeah, yeah. But I mean, a little bit. If you want to read more about you, it's also found on your website. Thank you so much, Philip. I really appreciate this wonderful conversation. I'm so blessed that you spoke about love, about building our relationship, and the do's and don'ts in a relationship. So that was awesome. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Toby, thank you very much. I hope your audience enjoyed it, and I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye. Bye.